Hello everyone, you are on the channel The Middle Ages. When we think of the medieval period, what comes to mind? Knights in shining armor, majestic castles, and grand tournaments, right? But behind this glamorous facade, there was a hidden world of shadows, secrets, and spies. That's right, espionage is as old as civilization itself, and the Middle Ages were no exception. Today, we're diving deep into the cloak and dagger world of medieval spies. Forget James Bond. These were the original masters of intrigue. So who were these medieval spies? Well, they weren't exactly MI6 agents with fancy gadgets. They came from all walks of life. You might find a traveling merchant with his ears open in every tavern and marketplace, gathering gossip about local lords and troop movements. Or a monk whose sacred vows allowed him to travel freely between warring kingdoms, carrying letters that weren't just about religious matters. Even noble ladies, often overlooked in the halls of power, could be formidable spies using courtly intrigue and social gatherings to extract vital information. Their missions were incredibly diverse and high stakes. A spy might be tasked with discovering the size and strength of an enemy army before a major battle. This information could mean the difference between glorious victory and total annihilation. Others were sent to sow discord within an enemy court, spreading rumors to turn nobles against their king. Some spies were even assassins, tasked with eliminating key political figures to destabilize an entire kingdom. Think about the risk. There were no diplomatic immunities. If a spy was caught, the penalty was almost always a gruesome and public execution, serving as a chilling warning to others. Now, you might be wondering, how did they communicate? Without smartphones or encrypted emails, medieval spies had to get creative. Ciphers were a favorite tool. One of the simplest was the Caesar cipher, where each letter in a message was shifted a certain number of places down the alphabet. For example, with a shift of 1, A becomes B, B becomes C, and so on. It sounds simple to us now, but back then it was a pretty effective way to hide information from prying eyes. More complex ciphers, known as polyalphabetic ciphers, use multiple substitution alphabets, making them much harder to crack. But ciphers were just one part of the puzzle. The real challenge was getting the message delivered. Messengers had to be trustworthy and brave, often traveling through dangerous enemy territory. To protect the information, they used all sorts of clever tricks. Messages could be hidden in the hollowed-out heels of a boot, sewn into the lining of a cloak, or even written on a tiny piece of parchment that could be swallowed in an emergency. Some messages were written in invisible ink, made from things like lemon juice or milk. The writing would only appear when the paper was gently heated, a magical trick for the uninitiated. Let's talk about some famous examples, because history is full of them. One of the most legendary spy masters of the Middle Ages was Sir Francis Walsingham, who served Queen Elizabeth I of England. While technically just after the medieval period, his methods were a culmination of centuries of medieval spycraft. Walsingham created a vast network of spies across Europe. His agents intercepted letters, decoded ciphers, and uncovered numerous plots against the Queen, including the famous Babington Plot, which led to the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots. He was ruthless, brilliant, and absolutely essential to Elizabeth's long and successful reign. Going back a bit further, during the 100 Years' War between England and France, both sides relied heavily on espionage. Spies, known as exploratores or scouts, would infiltrate enemy camps to assess their strength and morale. They would report back on everything from the number of knights to the availability of food supplies. In cities under siege, spies played a crucial role. They might try to find a weak point in the city walls, or even bribe a gatekeeper to open the gates at night for a surprise attack. The fate of entire cities rested on the shoulders of these clandestine operators. The Mongol Empire, under leaders like Genghis Khan, was also a master of intelligence gathering. Before any invasion, the Mongols would send spies disguised as traders or emissaries. They would meticulously map out the terrain, identify sources of water and pasture for their horses, and assess the political situation of the kingdom they planned to conquer. They gathered information on internal rivalries, which they could then exploit to divide their enemies. This thorough preparation was a key reason for their astonishing military success. They rarely walked into a fight unprepared. The church was also a major player in the medieval intelligence game. The Vatican had one of the most extensive information networks in the world. Through its network of bishops, priests, and monastic orders spread across Christendom, the Pope could gather information from every corner of Europe. This information wasn't just about religious matters, it was political and military intelligence. Papal legates or ambassadors traveled constantly, and they were always observing, listening, and reporting back to Rome. This intelligence network allowed the papacy to wield immense influence over the kings and emperors of Europe. Let's not forget the role of women in espionage. Because they were often underestimated, women could sometimes move more freely and attract less suspicion than men. A noblewoman in a foreign court could overhear conversations that men would never be privy to. A female servant could see and hear everything that happened within a castle's walls. Christine de Pizan, a famous medieval writer, even wrote about how a wise queen should use her ladies-in-waiting to gather intelligence to protect the kingdom. They were the invisible eyes and ears of the court. The tools of the trade were, by our standards, primitive, but they were effective. Disguises were essential. A spy might dress as a pilgrim on their way to a holy shrine, a beggar on a street corner, or a minstrel traveling from castle to castle. Each disguise provided a plausible reason for being in a certain place and a cover for asking questions. They also used coded language in seemingly normal conversations. A question about the price of wool in a certain town might actually be a query about the number of soldiers stationed there. It was a constant game of wits and deception. The psychological aspect of espionage was just as important as the practical side. Spreading disinformation was a powerful weapon. A rumor about a king's illness could cause panic and instability. A false report of a massive army approaching could cause a smaller force to surrender without a fight. This kind of psychological warfare could cripple an enemy before a single sword was drawn. Spies were masters of manipulation, playing on people's fears, ambitions, and greed to achieve their objectives. So, the next time you picture the Middle Ages, remember that it wasn't all jousting and feasting. It was a time of constant conflict and shifting alliances, where information was the most valuable currency. Behind the scenes, a secret war was being fought by an army of spies, men and women who risked everything to gain an advantage for their lord or their kingdom. Their stories are a testament to the fact that the hunger for information and the willingness to do anything to get it is a timeless part of human history. The world of medieval espionage is a fascinating reminder that things are not always as they seem. Thanks for joining us on the Middle Ages today. If you found this journey into the shadowy world of medieval spies as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. Let us know in the comments which part of medieval espionage you found most surprising. We'll see you in the next video.